If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch.
There still is no connection of any of Hunter Biden's business dealings with President Biden.
The topics of discussion on these phone calls is niceties that Biden sometimes didn't even...
Well, there are polls that also say I have great approval ratings.
We've got a humdinger for you today. Devin Archer, the former BFF of Hunter Biden, testified behind closed doors, and exactly what I predicted happened. Also, Kamala Harris sliding in the polls, but there's also apparently polls that say she's doing very well, and the ACLU goes after a prospective Catholic school. What a time to be alive. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Ooh, live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Tuesday, August 1st, the year of our Lord 2023. A lot of stuff to catch you up on. I hate to toot my own horn, but I predicted something yesterday, and it happened exactly how I thought it would happen. Now, the thing that I predicted was very, very obvious. I might as well have predicted the sky will be blue tomorrow. But at the same time, giving myself a little bit of credit. Yesterday, Devin Archer, the former best friend / business partner of one Hunter Biden. I don't know if you've heard about Hunter Biden at all, or Joe Biden. His dad, he's the president of the United States. Anyways, Devin Archer testified behind closed doors in front of Congress yesterday. Now, yesterday when we were on this show before the testimony, I said that I was a little concerned about the behind the closed doors thing because what always happens with this sort of stuff, the behind closed doors testimony / interview, I think they didn't call it technically a testimony, it was an interview, that as soon as there was the ending to this behind closed doors meeting, the people on the committee would sprint to the cameras. And that is exactly what happened. Actually, what happened was they sprinted to the cameras in the middle of it after Republicans did their questioning to say, look, everything is fine. Everything is okay. Now, I want to say some things really quick about what's going on here, just from a political standpoint. Obviously, Hunter Biden calling his dad at business meetings is kind of the crux of this whole thing. Did it happen? Is someone very close to Hunter going to say that it happened? And does that mean Joe Biden is a liar? All of those things turned out to be true. Now, here's the interesting part to me. Devin Archer was testifying behind closed doors in front of the Oversight Committee. Do you know who's on the Oversight Committee? The ranking member is Raskin, who's pretty good at what he does. I'm talking on the Democrat side of the aisle. Who else is on that committee? Cori Bush, a loud voice in the squad type part of the party. Listen to some of these names and let me know if you think that they love attention from the cameras. AOC is on that committee. Like I said, Raskin, Bush, Cori Bush, AOC. Shoot, let me figure. I had the list in front of me, and then I thought I would remember all of them. But there are some big names on the Democrat side of the House Oversight Committee that love attention. Who do you think they dragged out for the media interviews? Not AOC, not Cori Bush, not Raskin. Effing Dan Goldman? Who the heck is Dan Goldman? Well, he's a congressperson who's also on the Oversight Committee, but because nobody wanted to get in front of the cameras and say the things that he said, even though those people love attention, they send out this nobody to talk about it. And watch what he says immediately after the questioning is finished on the Republican side. Check this out.
We just finished the 2 hours of Republican questioning. And I think it is safe to say that after yet another 2 hours, there still is no connection of any of Hunter Biden's business dealings with President Biden. The witness indicated that Hunter spoke to his father every day, and approximately 20 times over the course of 10-year relationship, Hunter may have put his father on the phone with any number of different people, and they never once spoke about any business dealings. As he described it, it was all casual conversation, niceties, the weather, what's going on. There wasn't a single conversation about any of the business dealings that Hunter had.
So, who else is on this committee? Greg Kasser, Maxwell Frost, who is that Gen Z kid from Florida who loves getting in front of the cameras. Katie Porter, who's running for Senate in California, who would love more attention to her Senate campaign. Like I said, AOC, Cori Bush, Jimmy Gomez is on that panel. Ro Khanna also loves being in front of the cameras and talking. None of them wanted to go out in front of the camera and say what this... I was about to say this loser. That would have been not fair. Dan Goldman, who nobody knows or cares about, said, kind of making a fool of himself, saying, now to get into what he actually said, apparently he/the DNC think the American people are so stupid as to just say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Hunter Biden called Joe Biden when he was with high-level business people in foreign lands that Joe Biden happened to have somewhat of jurisdiction over, appointed by Barack Obama. Remember, Joe Biden was the point person for Ukraine under the Obama administration. Just so happens that they happen to be on the phone, and you know what? How's the weather over there? How's the weather in Ukraine? It's beautiful here today. It's a nice summer afternoon. How's the weather over there, Dad? Well, we're in Delaware this weekend. It's a beautiful day. By the way, who are you with, Hunter? Yeah. So that's the talking point. I'll get to some of the coverage in just a second, because I think you're going to have a field day with the coverage. But the thing here that I think is important and also being missed by the people who are saying, oh, well, it was just niceties. They were just talking about the weather. Is, okay, but also Joe Biden said that they never talked ever about any of Hunter's business. Now it is, oh, he was never involved. I've been hammering this point for a couple of weeks, is that the messaging has changed from the White House and from Democrats. It was first, Joe Biden has never talked to Hunter Biden about his business dealings, about who he's with, the business partners that he might be at dinner with while he's putting Joe Biden on speakerphone. Any of that stuff never ever happened. And now it is, no, he was never involved with Hunter's business. He never was actively participating in Hunter's overseas business dealings. Okay, but why did you lie about it the first time? Again, we'll get to some of the coverage in a second, but I did want to play this because I think this is actually fascinating. They also expect people to believe that the firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor would have been bad for Burisma, according to Devin Archer, who, again, is friends with Hunter Biden. And, well, I'm going to play you this clip. It is an argument to be made. I felt like I had to be fair to play this too. But watch this and we'll discuss on the other side.
Perhaps the most interesting thing that he said is that Burisma believed that they had the prosecutor general Shokin in their pocket. They had control over him, and they were concerned that if he was removed from office, that would be very bad for Burisma. Of course, as we all know, the allegation, to the extent that there still are allegations that have not been debunked related to Burisma, is that Vice President Biden advocated for official U.S. policy to have Ukraine remove Prosecutor General Shokin. And now we have confirmation from a Burisma board member who was on the board with Hunter Biden that was very detrimental to Burisma, that Burisma understood that Shokin was good for them. And we also know that from hordes of other evidence.
So that's the thing is, did Joe Biden fire that prosecutor at the behest of his son and his son's business dealings? First things first, I have no idea if that's even true, what he said. I would imagine it is. I don't doubt the congressman that much to just think he's just going to make something up. Obviously, there's spin, but I don't think he's just going to make something up. So it's probably true, but again, closed doors, who the heck knows? But also, everybody involved that he's talking to has a vested interest in saying, we didn't think that this thing was going to happen. There is a big difference between whether or not phone calls, physical things that happened or not. There is a huge ability to say something or have plausible deniability when it comes to saying that, well, Burisma thought that would be a bad thing. So it was not good that Joe Biden did this thing that everybody thinks would have been good for the company that Hunter was working for. There's no way of proving that. And so those two things are very, very separate. Whether or not Hunter Biden put Joe Biden on the phone turns out to be true. And then the other argument to say that, well, no, the thing that Joe Biden did in relation to the company that Hunter Biden was working for was bad for the company. There's no way of knowing that. Of course, they can say that it was, and the people that have a vested interest in saying that it was are probably going to say that it was. But there's no way of knowing that, and to stake your argument based on something that someone claims would possibly have been good or bad is pretty weak footing, especially when the crux of the argument is, did Joe Biden talk to Hunter Biden about his businesses? Sounds like yes. The clip we're referring to is this. This is a little bit long, and you've probably already seen this. This is from Joe Biden's time. I don't know if he was actually vice president at this time, but he was bragging about something that he did when he was vice president. That's what this is all based around. Check this out so you get some context, and then we'll discuss on the other, we'll talk about some of the coverage on the other side. Check it out.
And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
What was the term that they were using when Donald Trump was getting impeached for the first time? I forget what was that? Quid pro quo, maybe? Yeah, that sounded exactly like it. I don't need to rehash that whole thing. But that is the what the argument for Democrats now is that Joe Biden doing that actually hurt Hunter's company, and the reality is that it probably did not. The reality is that it probably helped. And the claims that they're making have no way of being proved or disproved. So weird argument weird hill to die on. I wanted to get to this because I think this is interesting. This is the same story continuing on. This is the coverage of this. This is a CNN guy. So at the very beginning, we played a video from, what's his name? Dan Goldman, not from any of the other popular congresspeople on this committee, but Dan Goldman, saying, well, no, it was just exchanging pleasantries, and that's all it was. This is CNN's actual reporting about what that guy said, and listen to how just they take it as gospel. Watch this.
So Goldman sort of explaining that Archer qualified the topics of discussion on these phone calls as niceties that Biden sometimes didn't even know who was on the other line with his son Hunter. And, sources in the room telling CNN now that Archer did not point the finger directly at any sort of a connection between Joe Biden and his son's foreign business dealings, and rather, said that Hunter Biden was selling the illusion of said access. Boris?
Really a stunning development, Zach, when you consider that Republicans were selling this as a breakthrough that would link Hunter's business dealings with his father. Instead, business was apparently never discussed, according to Devin Archer. Zach Cohen, thanks so much for the reporting. Brianna?
Well, hold on. According to Devin Archer, according to Dan Goldman, according to that guy from CNN, it was just niceties and pleasantries. Now, I kind of feel like you have to point out the obvious here. To assume that all it was niceties is to say that you don't understand how these sorts of things work. In other words, nobody's stupid enough to call Hunter Biden, or Hunter Biden is not stupid enough, and Joe Biden isn't stupid enough to call dad and say, hey, here are all of the things that we are doing on this phone with other people around on speakerphone. Nobody's dumb enough to say that. So I don't even know why there's no real point in arguing. But the whole idea that's saying, well, no, it's just Devin Archer said that they never talked about business on the phone when he was there. Yeah, dude. Do you actually believe that? Do you actually think that that's how it would have happened? No. Hunter Biden was selling the illusion of the brand. They said it right there. And was calling Joe to show what kind of influence and power he had. Now, does that prove that Joe Biden was involved? No, not necessarily. But does it completely and utterly disprove it, as CNN would have you believe? No, it doesn't. So at the end of the day, we are sitting with a bigger pile of circumstantial evidence, but moving the ball forward down the field of, okay, wait, you said this, but then this happened. And you said this, and then this happened. According to the New York Times, interestingly enough, they, I believe, are making a pretty big admission. This is from the New York Times, kind of conversely to what, or the opposite of what CNN is saying, said this: still, Mr. Archer's testimony underscored that Mr. Biden had made false or misleading statements regarding his family members' finances. During the 2020 presidential debate, Biden claimed that no one in his family had received money from China, when, in fact, Hunter and his business associates took in millions from a Chinese firm. In 2019, Biden also repeated that he had never discussed or never spoken to Hunter about his business dealings. So the New York Times is even saying, yeah, this is a thing that we probably should be paying attention to. But you still have, kind of your lower level hacks on cable news saying, oh yeah, this is nothing. They're talking about the weather, as if they would be stupid enough to say all of the things on the phone out loud in front of other people. Jim Biden famously quoted in saying plausible deniability by, what's that guy's name? Tony Bobulinski. Also a Biden associate, saying, hey, yeah, you never actually discuss anything specific with Joe. You just kind of tangentially involve him by, I don't know, maybe giving him a call at dinner when you're at a meeting with business associates to talk about the weather, or to prove that you can get the vice president of the United States on speed dial. Interesting. That is that. Let's move on to some things that, well, this is just fun. And by fun, I mean annoying, but fun. Kamala Harris. Scary and sad at the same time. The things that Kamala Harris thinks are scary. And also, if she actually believes them, it's sad. Kamala Harris was on, did a couple things. this first clip I'm going to play is from, I believe, ABC interviewing her about her polling numbers. I just thought it was funny. I'm just going to play it, and we'll talk about it on the other side. But then she talks about the climate change, climate anxiety. Have you ever heard of that term? Kamala will explain it. But first, watch this.
There are reports that say that you have the lowest approval rating of any vice president. I'm curious how much of a role, if any, that you feel race and gender play in that.
Well, there are polls that also say I have great approval ratings. I think the point that has to be made is that there are attempts to create distractions away from the accomplishments of our administration.
I like that. I also like how the reporter there, I forget her first name, but I think that's Valerie Jarrett's daughter. Anyways, I like the reporter there trying to bait her into the, or try to give her an in to the, well, this is a race and gender thing. You know what would be racist? It would be racist to not call Kamala Harris an idiot because she's black and a woman. That would be racist and sexist. The reason people think that Kamala Harris is a dum-dum is because she happens to be a dum-dum. The reason people don't like her is because she is unlikable, not because she is a black woman. And if you said that if you held back on criticism because she is a minority woman, that would actually be racist. I love that the tables just flip here constantly. No. It is racist if you hold back any criticism because of her race and gender. What is actually happening is people don't like Kamala Harris because she's an unlikable. I almost said something not good. She is unlikable and she is not smart. That's the reason why people don't like Kamala Harris, and that's why there are reports of her approval ratings in the toilet. Has nothing to do with any of her immutable characteristics. It has everything to do with, well, I guess, the immutable ability of her brain to work properly. Okay, so this I thought was actually more interesting. Kamala was sitting on some sort of, I don't know what this was, but talking about climate change and all that sort of stuff. Now, this is a bigger thing than climate change. I think this is what she's going to say here has bigger and more expansive implications than what is she's actually talking about, which is climate change. Watch this, and I would love to discuss this on the other side. Check this out.
So you look at, for example, young voters. I've been traveling the country meeting with our young leaders who in particular are talking to me about the climate crisis. They turned me on to a term I had not heard before. I said, tell me how you all are thinking about the climate crisis. And they shared with me a term, climate anxiety. They're concerned about their future in almost a doomsday fear about what might be within a couple of decades of now. They're concerned about whether they should have children, whether they should even try to buy a home, because what does the future hold for that prospect?
Yeah, that is a fascinating thing. Climate anxiety is something that people suffer from. Well, what do you think causes that? I think this is kind of in the same vein of Trump derangement syndrome and where that comes from. If you look at the policies of Donald Trump, very, very popular. The guy, on the other hand, who admittedly does shove his foot in his mouth sometimes, but the guy who gets villainized constantly and unfairly treated everywhere, you don't think that that's going to have some ramifications on whether or not people think that he is a evil person? Same thing goes with the climate change thing. If you exaggerate and say things that aren't provable, and look, I don't know why it's so high. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I'm just a layman guy looking at the world and how it is. It's very hot. Does that have anything to do with climate change? I have no idea. I was gonna say I fancy myself, but that's a dumb thing to say. I would consider myself an environmentalist. I like the environment. I think we should do everything we can to not destroy the environment. But also I understand economies and how the economics behind it work. And I also understand that China, India, and Russia make up for half of all the CO2 emissions. So if we're going to do anything about it, it requires going to war with them. And also, the climate people have been wrong so many times that even if they're right in any particular instance, it's hard to believe it. This is the classic boy who cries wolf thing. At the end of the day, the climate people have been wrong and exaggerated and just been caught in so many attempts to wreak havoc on people in their everyday lives that it's hard to believe them. And because they go to such extreme lengths, you get stuff like this. People saying they have climate anxiety. Who has time to be concerned about that? Seriously. I don't know. That is a bigger thing and a bigger problem that I think needs to be looked at from an anthropological standpoint. Why are people feeling emotions that lead to actual real life reactions based on something that they get told is a terrible thing constantly and over again that has proven to be exaggerated a bunch of times? I don't know. And I don't know how to help people that buy into this stuff. The only thing I can say is the media has a huge role to play in climate anxiety, Trump derangement syndrome, any sort of like theoretical anxiety that is entirely blamed on the media that tells them things in an exaggerated way to get clicks and views about things that are not necessarily in your control. So there's that. Most recent comment. Ben says, if you tell a lie enough, eventually it becomes the truth. Yeah. That is well. Yeah. There's a quote out there, and I forget, is it Goebbels? One of the Nazis said something along, if you repeat a lie loud enough, long enough, and fervently enough, or something like that, it eventually becomes the truth, which is exactly what I think a lot of the climate extremists are doing. So there is that. Really quick before we hop on here, I want to get this on here. The ACLU tweeted that they are going to go after a prospective Catholic school who is attempting to get public charter school money. The ACLU tweeted this yesterday. We are suing to block the nation's first religious public charter school. Oklahoma approved a virtual Catholic school request to become a public school, despite plans to, this is their words, not mine, discriminate against students and religiously indoctrinate them. We'll see them in court. The indoctrination word being thrown around is fascinating and interesting, especially considering the anti-American indoctrination going on in normal government schools. But the bottom line is Oklahoma approved a Catholic school to be a charter school and get public money. Now, the indoctrination argument is stupid. That's a dumb argument. But I guess in theory, the argument is that church and state need to be separate. But at the same time, there are several other sort of NGOs that have affiliations with things that a lot of people can call religion that nobody bats an eye about. And guess what? Your kid doesn't have to go to this school. If the government is throwing around a bajillions of dollars everywhere, you can't make the argument, especially the ACLU can't make the argument that it's about being a fiscal hawk and making sure you're looking out for the American bottom line. You just can't make that argument. I can make that argument, but they can't make that argument. So the argument specifically is then, in my opinion, we don't like Christians/Catholics, so we're going to go against them in this particular instance. obviously the whole shoe on the other foot thing. What if this was, I don't know, pick your other religious affiliation. Would the ACLU be going after it? No, probably not. Because apparently the media and groups like the ACLU have categorized Christians into we can punch them as hard as we can, as many times as we can, and it's fine. But I guarantee you, and I don't even think that this is even in question, but if there was another smaller religious group that tried to do the same thing and got approved by the state, I know that's a big thing. You'd have to actually get approved for it. The ACLU would not be fighting that because, well, they're only allowed to punch up, I guess. And apparently punching up includes religious people who happen to be Christians, but not religious people from other religious brands. Ryan says, wow, just wow. Yeah, that's kind of the thought that I have that on too. Karen says, get rid of school boards in the Department of Education. I think school boards probably matter. Local school boards, I'm all about local anything. Local, if it's a city that has X amount of people, localize it. I'm all about the school board there. But yeah, the Department of Education, like why do we have that? What does it do other than burn money? There's an Onion video about the money pit where there's a group of panelists sitting around talking about, our generation threw money into the money pit and the next generation should do it also. How we throw money into the money pit is really the question here, not whether or not we should. We always throw money into the money pit. And part of that money pit is the Department of Education at the federal level. But I'm all about local control. Let's see. That'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you're keeping track on Jobob Baby Watch, not yet, which is, kind of one of these days. I won't be on here for a little bit of, maybe a couple days. But that's probably because, we had our baby girl. So appreciate all of the texts and all of that sort of stuff coming in from well wishes and that sort of thing. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to find me pretty much anywhere. Social media, email. You'll be able to find me. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Unless, of course, we have a baby. God bless America.